The river flows on without end, yet the water is never the same water. This is the famous opening of Hojoki, an account of my hut, written by Kamo no Chomei, one of Japan's 3 great classical essays. The river never stops flowing, yet the water passing through is always new. The bubbles floating in the still pools form and vanish, never lasting. The people of this world, and the homes they live in, are exactly the same. Using the image of a flowing river, Chomei beautifully captures the Buddhist idea of Mujo, the impermanence of all things, that nothing in this world stays the same. In this video, we explore the era in which Kamo no Chomei lived and the ideas that shaped his thought. The life of Kamo no Chomei and the age of Hojoki. 1155, Kamo no Chomei is born. Chomei was born in Kyoto into the family of a priest at Shimogemo Shrine. His father, Kamo no Nagatsugu, was a prominent figure at the shrine, and Chomei grew up as a son of good standing. From an early age, he showed remarkable talent in poetry and the biwa lute, and was expected to succeed both as a priest and as a man of culture. At just 6 years old, he was granted a junior court rank, an exceptional honor for one so young. His future seemed bright. The age of the Taira. 1167, Taira no Kiyomori becomes the first warrior to serve as Grand Chancellor. Meanwhile, the political world was undergoing dramatic change. Kiyomori rose to the highest office of state, the first warrior ever to do so. Having triumphed in the Hagen and Heiji rebellions, the Taira clan monopolized power, and it was said, "Those who are not Taira are not human." They had reached their absolute peak. Around 1172, age 17, his father's death and first setback. The first turning point in Chomei's life arrived. His father died, and with him, Chomei's greatest support. He then lost a dispute over who would inherit the priestly role. Born into a distinguished family, yet unable to claim the position he desired, this experience began to shape the deep sense of life's impermanence that would define his later work. The 5 great disasters of Hojoki begin. 1177, age 22. The Great Fire of Anin. The first disaster. A massive fire swept through Kyoto, destroying 1/3 of the capital. Some died trapped in smoke. Others lost everything in an instant. Chomei witnessed the prosperity that humans had built vanish in a single night. Grand mansions, social status, accumulated wealth. Before the raging flames, none of it meant anything. Here, Chomei felt the fragility of human civilization for the first time. 1180, age 25, the whirlwind and the relocation of the capital. 2 disasters struck in the same year. First, a great whirlwind tore through Kyoto. Houses were crushed, pillars snapped, furniture and roof tiles were hurled into the sky. People could only stand in stunned silence, helpless. Today we tend to think of disasters as something that can be managed and prepared for, but for people in the medieval era, natural catastrophe was nothing less than the wrath of heaven. Chomei's belief that humans could master nature was shattered completely. Political power destroys a city, the relocation to Fukuhara. Kiyomori then announced plans to move the capital from Kyoto to Fukuhara, present-day Kobe. At his sudden command, people were forced to tear down their homes and relocate. Kyoto was left looking like a ruin. And in the end, the move failed. Within roughly half a year, the capital returned to Kyoto. What Chomei witnessed here was a harsh truth. The whims of those in power can ruthlessly destroy the peaceful lives of ordinary people. It was not only natural disasters. Human beings themselves were capable of creating terrible catastrophe. The Genpei War begins. 1180, the Minamoto rise up. As resentment toward the Taira grew across the country, Prince Mochihito issued a call to arms for the Minamoto clan to overthrow them. Minamoto no Yoritomo and Minamoto no Yoshinaka answered by raising their armies, launching the 5-year Genpei War. 1181, age 26, the Yova famine. The fourth disaster Chomei witnessed. A combination of extreme weather and warfare triggered one of the worst famines in Japanese history. Drought, heavy rains, and disease struck in waves. The food supply completely collapsed. The streets of Kyoto were filled with corpses, bodies piled along the riverbanks, starving people collapsing by the roadside. Chomei recorded even the sight of an infant still clinging to its dead mother, trying to nurse. According to the text, a monk named Ryugyo-hoin of Ninnaji Temple, grieving over the scale of the deaths, went around writing the Sanskrit character a symbol of the origin of all things, on the foreheads of the bodies he found, in the hope that even these souls might find peace. In just 2 months, April and May, Ryugyo-hoin counted more than 42,300 bodies abandoned on the streets of Kyoto alone. Including those who died quietly indoors, those swept away by rivers, and the suffering across all of Japan beyond the capital, the true death toll is believed to have been several times that number. What Chomei saw here was the true nature of human society. In peaceful times, courtesy, culture, and morality all exist. But when survival itself is at stake, human beings are pulled back into something raw, driven by nothing but the will to live. Hojoki continues to draw readers, even today, precisely because Chomei did not describe these horrors with excessive emotion. He recorded them with unflinching calm, a quiet and steady hand. It is that very coolness, watching civilization collapse without sentiment, that strikes deep into the reader's heart. That same year, Taira no Kiyomori, the unchallenged leader of the Taira, died of illness. The clan that had stood at the height of power now began its rapid decline. 1184 to 1185, the Minamoto close in on the Taira. Minamoto no Yoshitsune proved to be a military genius. He defeated the Taira in a succession of battles, at Ichi no Tani, Yashima, and finally Dan no Ura. In 1185, the Taira, who had once ruled all of Japan, were destroyed. 1185, age 30, the Great Earthquake of Genryaku. In the very year of the Taira's fall, Chomei experienced his final great disaster. A massive earthquake struck Kyoto, bringing down houses and historic temples one after another. Mountains collapsed, the ground cracked open, and violent aftershocks continued for days. Chomei recorded that the earthquake was unlike anything seen before. He wrote that if you stayed inside, you risked being crushed. If you rushed outside, the ground might split open beneath you. There was, in short, nowhere safe to be. This is a feeling that resonates painfully with Japanese people even today. The deep-seated anxiety of living on an island of earthquakes, its earliest expression can already be found right here, in this age. The Age of Warriors, the appointment of Shugo and Jida. In 1185, the same year as the earthquake, Minamoto no Yoritomo won the right to appoint Shugo, military governors, and Jida, land stewards, throughout the country. In effect, he had gained official, court-sanctioned authority to control the land and warriors of all Japan. With this, the country shifted decisively from an aristocratic society to one in which warriors held real power. 1192, the Kamakura Shogunate is established. Yoritomo was appointed shogun, and the Kamakura period began in earnest. Chomei lived through one of history's great turning points, feeling it in his bones as the glittering world of the Heian aristocracy came to an end and the age of the warrior began. A late revival, and another defeat. 1201, age 46, a return as a poet. Chomei's exceptional skill in classical poetry was widely admired. He was selected to join a prestigious poetry project organized by retired Emperor Go-Toba. Once defeated in his youth and pushed aside, Chomei now found himself back in the spotlight as a man of culture. 1204, age 49. A final defeat and taking holy orders. In his late 40s, Chomei made one last attempt at the position he had long desired, priest at Kawai Shrine, a sub-shrine of Shimogamo. He even had a personal recommendation from retired Emperor Go-Toba, and his lifelong dream seemed within reach. But fierce opposition from relatives within the priestly family blocked him once again. Despite the imperial backing, he was denied the position. Chomei was deeply crushed. He made the decision to renounce the world and take Buddhist vows. This final, devastating setback led him to abandon all claim to his family's distinguished priestly heritage and to begin a new life as a man of faith. 1208, age 53, a hut on Mount Hino. In the hills of Hino, south of Kyoto, Chomei built an extremely small dwelling, just one jo, roughly 10 feet, square, about the size of a 4.5 tatami mat room. There, surrounded by nature, he began a quiet life of seclusion. 1211, age 56, a lingering attachment to the world. Though he had seemingly left the world behind, Chomei made one journey to Kamakura. He hoped to be appointed poetry tutor to the third shogun, Minamoto no Sanetomo, who was passionately devoted to classical verse. In effect, a job application. The attempt ended in failure. This episode reveals something very human about Chomei. Even after taking holy orders, he had not entirely let go of his longing for a place in the world. The birth of Hojoki. 1212, age 57, Hojoki is written. The year after returning from Kamakura, Chomei completed Hojoki. Within the pages written in that tiny 4.5 mat hut, he distilled his vivid first-hand memories of the 5 great disasters of his youth, the collapse of Heian aristocratic society, his own repeated failures and the long road to renouncing the world, and the quiet life he now led in his small hut. Hojoki is not simply the peaceful retirement diary of a man who gave up on life. It is the unflinching, viscerally honest reportage of one intellectual who witnessed an entire era, the brilliant age of Heian, come to its end. 1216, age 61, a quiet passing. In his final years, Chomei compiled Hashinshu, a collection of Buddhist tales. He died at the age of 61. Chomei stood at the front lines of history, witnessing both the final decline of the glittering Heian capital and the dawn of a new era under warrior rule. That is why the sense of impermanence that runs through Hojoki is not abstract philosophy or borrowed Buddhist doctrine. It carries real weight, wrung from the life of upheaval, lived in full through one of history's most turbulent ages. A final contradiction, attached to having no attachments. Near the end of Hojoki, Chomei turns a coldly honest eye on himself and stumbles upon a terrifying contradiction. I have come to love this small hut, am I not, somewhere inside, proud of this quiet and simple life? He had believed he had let go of everything, his wealth, his status, his attachment to the familiar capital. But he now realized that he had simply replaced those attachments with a new one, an image of himself as a man of simplicity, a hermit who had risen above the world. This is a trap remarkably familiar to us today. It is the same structure as the pride one takes in being a minimalist, in not being consumed by a wasteful consumer culture, in living a spiritually elevated life, the attachment to a self-image, to one's own ego. 800 years ago, Chomei had already seen through this deep and stubborn human tendency towards self-satisfaction. Here lies Hojoki's true power. Chomei was not a preacher dispensing wisdom from a position of superiority. At the very end, He turned his questioning gaze even on his own enlightenment and his own self-deception. Why Chomei chanted Amida Buddha and fell silent. At the close of Hojoki, unable to find a clear answer to his own questions, Chomei writes that he can only remain silent. He chants Namu Amida Butsu a few times and quietly sets down his brush. This is not a mere formal religious ending. Chomei had spent his entire life looking unflinchingly at great disasters, political chaos, the ugliest impulses of human nature, and his own inner attachments. The conclusion he arrived at, in the end, may have been this: words and reason cannot save us. No matter how deeply we think, we cannot escape our own ego. No matter how great a civilization we build, it can collapse with shocking ease. And so, when all logic is stripped away, what remains is only prayer. Namu Amida Butsu, I take refuge in Amida Buddha, is the cry of a person who knows that, by their own power alone, they cannot be saved, a helpless human being reaching out to something far greater than themselves. In the final lines of his own book, Chomei was acknowledging, plainly and without pretense, in the end, I have not attained any wisdom. I am an imperfect, incomplete human being. It is in this act of total confession that the profound and deeply human honesty of Hojoki lies. Hojoki is not the quiet retreat literature of a man who gave up on life. It is the urgent, unrelenting intellectual journey of one person who, within a crumbling world, kept asking, right up until the end, how should a human being live?